All right, we're gonna get into it. In this one, we're gonna be talking about the basic price map that you should be using, building that foundation. It can get a lot deeper than what we're gonna go into here. All of the concepts that, or all of the main concepts that I'm teaching, they can be taken to extreme levels. Like skill wise, your accuracy is just gonna improve and improve and improve. Um, really though, I wouldn't focus too much of your effort into mastering technicals as much as mastering yourself. Like I've been saying, the technicals is just the tool you're gonna use to actually make the money, and then the the vehicle that's gonna get you there is yourself. And if you can't master yourself and handle your own emotion, then the tools that I'm going to give you are honestly kind of useless because you will not make money. You might make some good trades and you might make some good money in the short term, but you need to build that consistency. So, we've been talking about the basics of a range, the four stages of the market. By now, you should be able to understand that pretty well. In the last one, we were just touching on the kind of break, the retest, and that's where we're going to be looking for proof of concept and then the continuation in our bias direction, where the proof that participants in the market are wanting to take price in our bias direction. So, basic price map here, kind of introducing some new concepts we haven't really talked about yet. So here we have, you see we have the break, the retest, and then the continuation. So within that, basically, as we have the break, that's step one. Okay? So with that, we define our invalidation point, this high. This was the high that caused the break. The low of the range that was broken, obviously, if this was a bullish market that we were showing an example, this would all just be inversed. But we're talking about a bearish market. Oops. So that's the example we're going to go with. So we have the broken range, we have our invalidation point, and we have our target. So new concepts. Let's start here with the break. So we have our bias for bearish, invalidation point, our target, and now we need to get into pivots. So levels. How will we know once this low is put in, we have our invalidation point, and we want to see price pull back and retest essentially? Where will it retest to? So this gets very deep, but for starter, it's pretty simple. Honestly, later on in the course in the education, I will be going in depth about this on how to refine these levels, how to get insanely accurate areas where we want to see price test into and then continue to where we can have like a 1 pip stop or less, getting insane RR if we want that. But some people don't like to trade that way, so I'm not going to teach only how to trade for high RR. I'm going to teach how to trade the general setup. I'm going to teach how to trade it through more of a systemized process, a mechanical approach, and more of a psychological approach, kind of. But we'll get into that later. So, pivot. After this low is put in and we have price pulling back, we're essentially looking for the last area before this price here fell off that was a high volume area where buyers and sellers were flipping back and forth. So let's come up here. Okay, so this is the range we were looking at last video. We had low, high, low. We have our invalidation point, we have our broken range, we have our target. Now, from here onwards, as price is pulling back, how do we know where it is going to pull back? Okay, so looking over here at the prior range, where is the high volume areas within from this low up to the high? Where was the most action or the most back and forth within that market at the time? I would say it is between here and between here. within this area. Do you see all this chop? That's volume. That's essentially money or orders resting at that area. Okay, this is only one way to find levels, and we'll dive into other ways to do that later on. But for the basic foundation building, this is what I want you to look for. So, a way to do that, after you have defined your prior range, an easy tool you can use just to start understanding this a lot better is the fixed ranged volume profile. Oops. Because we're order flow traders and we're looking at it through a chart, this is a great tool. Once you get to a certain point, you'll start to see these candles as nothing more than just order flow and the actual volume within the price itself instead of needing to use volume. So you're essentially seeing order flow on a chart, but that takes a while to build. So instead, what I would do, you find the fixed range volume profile tool and define your prior range. After you've done that, go from the range low to the range high. Boom. And this here, this red line, do you see how? Okay, so this is essentially showing us where at within the range that we pick, the most action is being done, where the high volume is at, and essentially defining a story or a level that we can use. So notice up here, very small nodes, really low volume. Here it picked up a little bit, still not too much. Up here, basically zero. Down here, basically zero. Up here, you can see how it starts to build up, build up, build up. And then we have this red line here, that's called the POC, the POC, point of control. That is essentially the high volume area within that given range that the most action was done, the most back and forth, the most buying and selling within that range. So we take from, say, we'll go from this low here up to this high. Boom, drag that over. This is how you can find key levels. We're essentially hunting for liquidity, and that liquidity is basically just contained within these POCs, these point of controls, these high volume areas. So we're under the assumption that as price tests back in, it'll test back into this high volume area, essentially, and then continue. So that's the first concept. Read over that, watch over that again. I mean, if it confuses you, I think this is a pretty easy way to find it, and we'll dive more into that later on. But for now, that's all I want to do with that concept. Now the second concept in the price map here, you can see we have down here, this is essentially what we're looking for. Break, retest, proof of concept, boom, continue. So we have break, retest, proof of concept, continue. So then break, we have our bias, our invalidation point, our target, our pivot, okay? We've already defined all that. Retest. Now, rebalance. What does that mean? Okay, so right here, notice this dark box. Okay, I put that on there for a reason. Notice here I put missing imbalanced price. Okay, so let's go up here to this. Now, the market moves from rational to irrational behavior. It moves from extremes to non-extremes, and it moves quickly once liquidity or money has been cleared for a given move. That's what I mean whenever I say every single move in every single market is planned out ahead of time, and the market shows hints of what it's going to do next. So notice here, from this high down to the low, as price started to fall off here, notice the missing price within here, and then especially right here. Notice this huge down candle right here. Boom, boom. All of that is essentially the same as what a lot of people look for in gap plays with stocks. It's treated the exact same. Now, we can use, just for a quick explanation or quick example, the fixed ranged tool. 1 second. that I was talking about. Okay, so let's go from this high, this is just for example purpose, to this low. Okay, notice, look at the volume here. There's none. There's very, very little. Yes, this is still the POG, but it's only the POC because it's in relation to from this high to this low, where there just wasn't much volume traded in there in general. So if we go from this high to this low, boom. Okay, now look over here. Let me remove this one. As price traded down, boom. Notice this big down candle. Look over here at the left. No volume. Okay, up here, there's missing price. Not as much as here. There is still missing price there. Slightly less volume. Notice right here, this big back and forth between buyers and sellers before it did fall off that cliff. Much more volume. Down here, a ton of volume because we have this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between buyers and sellers. That is essentially what missing price is, okay? Price naturally will fill into this missing price because there are essentially still buy and sell positions left open that need to be filled within this price point or within this price range. Yes, price did not test all the way up and fill into this missing price, only to here, but that's why I'm going to teach you different variations in the actual mechanics behind it, because then you'll have an explanation for every single move and why price only traded up into here instead of continuing up and filling into this imbalance price here and here. So come back down into here. And those are the two main concepts for the retest portion of that. What to look for. You're looking for this missing imbalance price. We will dive a lot deeper into all these concepts as we go deeper. But just the intro to the concepts, I want you to know that we have essentially everything from the range. We have our bias, we have our invalidation point, our target, our pivot. On the retest, we're looking for this missing price, the gap essentially with low volume areas. And then we have to use context with that. Okay, so yes, like I was saying, there is missing price here, and price didn't test back into it. Instead, it only filled in here to the exact pip, by the way. You notice that. Not a coincidence, happens all the time. And then a continuation. So basically, the mechanic behind this, or this imbalance price, is that as price breaks a range and then it's testing back in, price is distributing orders into that missing price. So it's essentially, remember the 4 stages of the market we were talking about, distributing, aka topping out, buying to sell by the algorithms into that missing price. And that is where that distribution will tend to happen at. And then the high of that distribution will typically be into our high volume area or level, pivot, whatever you want to call it, supply and demand, whatever you want to call it, to then move to the downside. Because it's essentially distributing, boom, high volume area running into a brick wall, and then boom, sellers come in and take the market to the downside. So how, once price comes up into our high volume area, our pivot, how can we get proof of concept that this market's then going to continue? Because we now have everything else. We have an entire story here already made. We have everything. All of it fits together perfectly. But now, as price is up here, how do we confirm, such as with this, that it's the top and not price wanting to continue up to the top side? Well, it's the exact same thing. We're literally looking for the exact same thing. So notice as price comes up, we top out. And there are a few concepts here like that we haven't even tapped or talked about yet, such as inside ranges and all that, but we'll dive in that later. But essentially, as price distributes up into this missing price, tapping into our high volume area, filling in buy to sell orders, it then does the exact same thing right here from this high to this low. Let's go fixed range volume profile again. Check that out. Okay, now notice all of this missing price. Missing price. That is essentially proof that sellers in the market, participants, are taking over and displacing or leaving behind imbalanced price here. Missing price, essentially low volume price. Yes, it does come up and fill into that partially. Noticing here this was imbalanced, and we tested back and then continued. But essentially, your proof of concept is the exact same thing in live price, waiting for it to happen, which would be that proof of imbalance and essentially that high volume kicking into the market, taking over, where sellers are taking over the market. The exact same way they did here, doing the exact same thing right here. So 3 new concepts for this video. Are pivots, one way to find them, easy way. Imbalance and rebalancing of ranges, because that is how order flow naturally prints in every single market. And then the proof of concept being that the exact same thing, the imbalance or the displacement, high volume kicking in, large sellers taking over, and then continuing. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. Write down this price map, take notes on it, study it, go back, test it yourself. Look for all these different concepts, look for these levels, look for this imbalanced price. Essentially what you want to look for is a large buy or sell candle within that prior range as the sellers took over, or the buyers took over, in this case sellers, that left behind a large empty void within price. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this one.